There are two conversations to have when it comes to Matt Rhule being the head coach at Nebraska, the 31st official head coach at Nebraska. One conversation you can have is one based in reality. The other conversation would be fairy tales and coulda, shoulda, woulda. Conversations like, well, shouldn't have hired him for the following reasons. There was someone else that was better qualified, or they paid him too much money, or their contract is too long, or for the following reasons, Nebraska is going to have more losses than wins, and we'll be kicking him to the curb in a few years just like Scott Frost. Those are nonsense conversations. The real conversation, the only conversation I'm going to have, is that Matt Rhule is the head coach. He is my head coach at Nebraska. He's your head coach at Nebraska. He's our head coach. He deserves our respect. He deserves our admiration. He deserves our support. And you can go back and watch the video I did yesterday on some objective reasons why I don't think he was the right guy for the job. But you see, those are conversations that took place yesterday and have nothing to do with today. Today, Matt Rhule is, well, he's the best coach for the job. How do I know? Because he is the coach for the job. He was hired by Trev Alberts and this administration and the donors and whoever else is paying his salary for the next 8 years. And as long as he is the head coach, outside some incredible just dereliction of duty that I don't see based on the press conference, which we'll get to in a moment, happening, I got nothing to say but go Big Red and, go Matt Rhule as the coach of Big Red. Because that's the reality. He's the coach, whether you like it, whether you want it or not, he's our coach now. There were some things that I heard at the press conference after he began to speak, which gave me a lot of hope that Matt Rhule is going to be the right guy for the job. Certainly, I don't think Matt Rhule is going to hurt anything. I thought that anybody could have taken over the team and done better than Scott Frost. I thought, ow, my finger hit my table. I thought that anyone would do better than Scott Frost. I thought that if Mickey Joseph took over, the bottom was already in this year, and there'd be one or two more wins next year, just if the wind blew in the right direction. So when I listened to Matt Rhule talk today, knowing that I think the bottom's already in, and I already recorded videos on that very topic a couple months ago, knowing I think the bottom was already in, and all that's left from here is upside. I talked about this ad nauseum after Scott Frost was fired. Then what I heard Matt Rhule say today gave me hope that he's going to add more than just 1 or 2 games next year. I know this sounds crazy, but I think that Matt Rhule could add 2 or 3 or 4 games to the win column next year because of the 3 things I heard that were most important, the 3 good things I heard in the press conference. Thing number 1, stability. He talked about his family, his faith, his father, who was a minister. He talked about his kids. He talked about his wife. He made it clear, and if you go back and listen, he even said at one point, his family comes first. It's about his family. Now, why is this important? He's a guy taking a job for $72 million in 8 years. Maybe family shouldn't be the most important thing right now. Maybe his job should be. I mean, some of y'all might think that. Here's the deal. Insurance companies know that a man or a woman who's married with kids is a much better risk. Because they're going to work hard to feed people and clothe people, make sure that their family is safe and healthy and that they're safe and healthy so they can provide for those folks. And they'll do the best job that they can to keep paying those insurance policies so if something ever did happen to them, their family would be supported after they were gone. Listen to what I just said. And listen to what Matt Rhule said. Matt Rhule talked about after his time at Nebraska, he wanted folks to still see the legacy of Matt Rhule as being a positive. Not just for the next year or 2 or 3 or 10, but however long in the future, people would look back on this as a positive thing. That's like a parent. When I heard that, that reminded me of a parent doing what they could do for their family, not just for today, but for the future. That kind of stability, a guy that has that kind of connection and is willing to talk openly about his faith and his family like that, that kind of guy can't do anything but just by being that guy add something to the win column. 1, 2 wins just for being that guy for the players to look up to, for the staff to look up to, for fans to rally and support. One of the things that hurt Scott Frost I believe, was the groundswell of negativity day after day after day after day. We know Scott Frost brought a lot of that on himself with his own personal behavior. I don't see that with Matt Rhule. I see a family man who's going to work awfully hard, not just for his biological family, but for the family he's now embracing called Husker Nation. Number two, I think that the standard he's going to set, as what Connor Hayden at Corncrest calls the CEO level coach, I think the standards he's going to set as a CEO coach, regardless of the X's and O's, is going to set in place a hierarchy, a delegating of authority, a division of labor that I don't know that Nebraska's seen, maybe even under Tom Osborne. I don't know. I know that Matt Rhule talked about this in terms of a business and talked about the things that he would do as that leader of a business that tell me there's going to be people who are going to be held to account when stuff doesn't happen from practice. I mean, he talked about all the little things. It's kind of weird. I heard people talking about Matt Rhule saying that he was a detail-oriented guy. Man, he was talking about all sorts of non-game day stuff, non-practice stuff. He was talking about stuff for little kids to be involved in. Talking about building a culture from the time these were children until they were old enough to take the field as a Cornhusker themselves, as a player. And that sort of standard he's setting, I think that's something that Nebraska, again, may not have had for 20, 25 years, if ever. And I think that also will add some wins to the win column. And finally, he talked about that offensive line. He talked about the defensive line and talking about that's how you win games. Let me tell you, we talked about the stability. We talked about standards. And he talked about smash mouth football. I don't know if he mentioned the phrase smash mouth, but if you listen to what he said, Matt Rhule is going to bring back the kind of football you and I have been screaming about for the last 25 years. Ain't going to be any more Bill Callahan or Mike Riley or Scott Frost, gee whiz offense. He talked about keeping it real, keeping it basic, and winning in the trenches, something we've been begging for years. That kind of football is the way that you can win in the Big Ten. It was refreshing to hear him talk about things that resonated with fans, things that we've been thinking about and wanting for a long time. Now, if I seem like a kid in a candy store here, based in opposition to my video yesterday, well, remember, he's the coach now. These are things he said he's going to do. I'm excited about this stuff. You ought to be excited too. If he didn't perform in the way that I wanted at Temple, listen, at Temple or Baylor or Carolina, none of that matters now. What matters to me today is that Matt Rhule will follow through on what he says he wants to do for Nebraska starting today, November 28th, 2022, and for the next 8 years. Matt Rhule is my coach. He is your coach. He is our coach. And for those three very important reasons, I think that Nebraska next year, maybe this is the first prediction video you will hear, I think that Nebraska next year can at least go 7-5, if not 8-4. And I think a bowl game is almost a sure bet with Matt Rhule as coach. Thank you for watching. Take care. Go Big Red. And go Matt Rhule.